The approval of the meeting agenda.
Make a motion to approve the agenda
Second.
as presented.
Second
Second.
by Karen. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Next item on the agenda is the approval of minutes. The first item is the approval of minutes of the June 12th, 2025 and the September 11th, 2025 minutes. We can take them separately if you like. Or we can all just approve as, I'll say we go separately. So for the first item, it'll be the what do we have here? 9/11 minutes. It is connected to your agenda item. Both are drafts.
Are we separating them?
Yes, we're
Okay, so I make
separating
a
them.
motion
So,
that we approve the 9/11 minutes as written.
okay.
Second.
Oh, those, second, we need a second
Joe.
Joe.
by Joe.
seconded, right.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Okay, 9/11 minutes is approved. The next minutes is 6/12. Wow, that's way back.
That's the one we had a problem with.
Okay.
I move as written.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Okay, carries. Okay, moving on to the next item is the review of the monthly treasurer's report.
No,
Oh,
the
no, no,
correction.
There's a correct
Oh.
on the August
Two.
minutes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
2.2.
Sorry. Yes, correction to the minutes of the August 14th, 2025 meeting.
So that was, the correction is because it was Andre Lifton's first meeting, and he's not on the roster and he's not on the agenda anywhere as being there. And it's also as a full member, and it's also the meeting that Joe moved to the alternate member, and that's also not addressed in there. So that we don't have Andre in the minutes period as being present and Joe becoming an alternate.
Okay. I do not see it on the agenda as an attachment. Does anyone see whether the corrections were made?
Mr. Vice Chair, those draft minutes are not attached. I can make those minutes were approved at the last meeting. I can make those corrections to the minutes.
Okay.
So
So Kelly, did you get what the correction was?
Yes, sir, I did.
Of course, it's recorded.
So we will get those corrections and we would have to move it to the next meeting.
no, I think.
No,
we
well-
can-
Or can
We
we
can
go
act on
ahead?
it today. Right?
Okay,
I make a motion that we add, adjust, review, change, amend, thank you, the August 14th minutes to include Andre Levin as being present, as a full member, and Joe moving to the position of
Oh,
alternate member.
correct.
okay. Do I get a second on that?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so moving on to item number 3 is the review of the monthly treasurer's report.
Yeah, and it was my mistake that I did not send it to Kelly, but I sent it all to you guys.
Okay,
You need to turn on your mic once you come here, you talk.
Okay, Karina, would you like to highlight any of the?
No, I mean, we're only in the second month of the fiscal year. Nothing really stands out other than, there was more building activity or new residential activity in the first 2 months of last fiscal year than this fiscal year. But other than that, the only other thing I wanted to point out, there was new information that came after I sent this to you guys with regarding the FY 26 budget was in review for the GFOA Budget Award. Yesterday I did get notice we received that award, and we also got special recognition for the long-range operating financial plans in that budget.
Congratulations.
What's the criteria for the award?
Well, you have to meet there's a whole like 7 pages of criteria, like, making sure you have 3 years of previous, evaluate your future plans. There's a whole thing. The document's on our website.
Okay, and you
have
said
to
that
meet all
there's
those
they
expectations.
also recognize us for long-term planning?
Yes.
That's good.
But that was the first year we actually had a long-term plan in our budget document.
It's a fairly robust list of requirements that a municipality has to meet in order to be eligible to receive recognition. It's not a gimme. I know the county I came from, we opted not to do it a couple of years just because of the burden to
Yep.
actually do all of the extra steps to be eligible. So it's significant recognition.
Yeah, you've got to describe your accounting methods, your budgeting methods, your different funds, how they relate. You have to outline your goals, how you're going to achieve those, descriptions of each department. There's various things.
I can tell you, it was so much work that one of the previous treasurers never achieved it.
Good job. Well, this is we've been getting that award since FY 19 or FY 20, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
So it's been a while.
Did Bob, did Joel get it? Well, Bob was it?
No,
I didn't.
that was
so
something that we talked about starting to do.
Just not,
Yeah.
right, okay.
Does anyone have any questions regarding the reports?
This question may have been raised before, so I apologize if it was. I'm looking at the multi-band securities. Am I reading that correctly? Yeah, my laptop's in the shop, so I'm using a phone.
Multi-banks,
Certificates of deposit.
those are CDs.
There's, yeah, laddered like, okay. Are they insured?
Yes, so our CDs, we don't purchase more than 250,000 for each CD
Oh,
to
okay.
ensure that they are insured. Yeah.
They're just with a lot of different institutions, but through a central purchasing
yeah.
place. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
it's just like our sweep account. We purchase a lot of CDs in there, but they're not with the same bank. And we limit it to the $250,000 cap. So it is, FICID, what's insured. Yeah.
Okay. So compared to last year, the revenues seem to be more than last year. 845 in 2025 versus 1.4 million.
Which page are you on?
I'm on page 3,
Yeah, I'm not reading the same number you are.
general fund revenue and expenditure
Oh,
overview.
Mhm.
Yeah, and your expenditures are way down compared to last year, same time. So that's good.
A lot of it is based on things being done and contractors' costs and when that happens during the year. So you get a better picture as the year goes through rather than the beginning of the year. You know?
Anything, anything else you want to highlight?
I mean, I did change up the report based on the last for the cash distribution. It's did a little different and it's just for those amounts that paid over 20,000, but I can't get them based on I can't sort them by amount. It automatically, that's not a sorting option, but there's not that many because I've cut out everything that was less than 20,000.
I do like the blue, very nice.
Okay, but thank you for doing that, sorting it, you know.
So
I
when,
mean, greater than 20,000. I
well,
think that's,
I also had to go with a different report to do that, but it gave you the same information. Actually, that one
Okay.
gives you it by payment instead of vendor as a total.
okay, that's good.
when do we start on the next budget?
Well, I'm going to let,
I think that's the next, I did literally think it's the next agenda item, so I think, right?
Yes.
yes.
I was actually looking at time, like blocking some time off for it. Getting busy.
Is everyone satisfied with the report?
Is it a voting item or
Yeah.
just review,
It's
right?
just
Just review.
information for you and if
Mhm.
you had any questions on that information. It's the same report I give to the council.
Okay, hearing none, then we'll move to the next item, which is discussion and recommendation of budget and spending proposals.
Well, there's nothing there because we haven't started the FY27
Okay.
budget yet.
And then moving on to number 5. Fiscal year 2027 budget process recommendations and calendar.
This is, you want me to start talking now?
Yep.
That's fine. All right, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Chuck Stevens. I'm the town manager. I think I've met all of you. I met Karen just a few moments ago, and I still haven't met your chair. Nicole, is that right?
And she's
Nicole,
not,
yes.
she's not on right, okay.
Okay, well, that's unfortunate, but thanks for welcoming me back today. It's a pleasure to be here. I would argue that we've already started the budget process for FY 2027, and I think it started, technically in my mind, it started on September 11th, because that's when the board, or I'm sorry, not the board, county commissioners. That's when the town council had their annual retreat. So we had an all-day retreat for a little bit of team building, but really for priority setting, to give guidance to myself and the assistant town manager. As all of you know, the budget is it's more than spreadsheets and numbers. It's really a policy document. And of all the policy statements that any elected body makes, the budget is by far the most visible and the most powerful. Because anybody can pick up a budget and read it and look and know exactly where the elected officials are spending the taxpayers' dollars, and that it is literally where their priorities are, right? Because they're going to put their money where their mouth is. So the budget is a policy document at its core. And so that's why I say we started the budget cycle for FY 2027 budget development on September 11th when we went into the retreat. So as far as the calendar goes, we're well underway. I've already started working on a presentation to get policy recommendations and guidance from the council. I plan to bring that to them in December. There's 2 meetings in the month of December. I plan to get this on the first meeting. I don't remember the exact date. I could look on my phone and tell you, but it's whatever that first meeting in December is. I want to get this prepared for the council. I want to start that presentation with, I don't know that I'll call it a primer for in a public meeting, but really a primer, because I think with a new council and a new town manager, my first time going through the budget, with this council, and for this council, for four of them, it'll be their first time going through a government budget development process. I really want to baseline us. And so just starting with a presentation, what is a budget? I just said it was a policy document, so I want to dig into that a little bit more. What it is, what is their role? As an elected body, what is their role? It's not, in my opinion, I don't believe it's their role to be accountants scrubbing the checkbook. That's not what they're elected to do. What they're elected to do is to set policy guidance and strategic direction and make sure that when staff goes back and builds a budget and we bring it back to them, we're achieving the goals that they've established for us. So I want to talk a little bit about roles of what they should be expecting and what they should do and what the staff's going to do, given that guidance. I want to talk about some basic definitions. People use words all the time. It's always good to level set everybody and so that we're all speaking from the same glossary, right? So, and I don't mean this to be insulting, and I hope that I won't be, but what is a fund? We have multiple funds in our budget, but I've got new counselors. Do they know what a fund is? Do they know what fund accounting is? I shouldn't assume that they know that. And so I'm not going to. We're going to have a presentation in December where we walk through all of that. And then at the end, I'm working and I've been going back and forth with Michelle and Karina on some policy questions before we even start crunching numbers, before we even start really getting into the spreadsheets and looking at the money. There's some things that we need to know as staff, and I've got some of the drafts here and I'll just bounce them off of you. And these aren't final yet. These are still being refined, but I think you'll get the gist of what we're seeking. So, and I think it's on our agenda here next to talk about reserves, but one of the first questions I have for them is do they have a desire around the reserve policy? And I know that this committee has been working on developing hopefully a recommendation around a reserve policy that we can bring forward to council. And if I can get that before this December meeting, that would be great, because I would like to have a policy adopted that answers this question, so I don't have to talk about it in December. But GFOA says that we should have a minimum of 2 months. And I'm sorry, does everybody familiar with GFOA?
Yeah.
So GFOA says we should have 2 months of reserve to cover our operational expenditures. Okay, we're holding a little bit more than that. And I know that this council has already asked about that. They've asked about, we have reserves. Is it advantageous for the town to be sitting on cash right now, or should we be spending it? Because depending on the inflation rate and interest rates, sometimes it's more advantageous to keep cash. Sometimes it's more advantageous to spend it down. If you have a reserve policy that tells you what the minimum level should be, how you're going to restore it when you dip below that, and you have that on the shelf, then you don't have to worry about those questions, because you've got a good policy that can guide you. So that's a question that I want to bring forward to them. Hopefully we have your recommendation, and that'll be a very short conversation. Another question for them about reserves. And I know all of you, and I don't want to shoot the messenger because I know what your answer is going to be, but it is a policy question. Should we ever consider using reserves to cover operational expenses, right? And I think everybody in here is going to say, no, that's a horrible practice. You never want to do that. I know that, okay? But it is a policy question for the elected officials, because they have the latitude to do that if they desire, okay? But I want to walk them through why we would recommend against that, why we would strongly urge them to not do that way before we ever get into the spreadsheets. Because when we get into the spreadsheets and we get to the point where we're at the values balancing dilemma, because that's what's going to happen, because every budget comes down to that, we're going to have the hard decisions of, we want to spend more than we have. There's always a temptation to say, well, we could just dip into our reserves. So I would like to have a policy conversation in December before we get to the numbers, so that we can say, well, now we talked about it and we said the policy was no, we didn't want to do that. There are times when we can do that, when it's a one-time, when it's a unanticipated, unexpected expense like we incurred that I dropped on Karina's desk about 2 hours ago, right? We had a server fail and we're going to have to replace it, and it's going to cost us money. We didn't plan on that. We didn't budget for that. It happened. We have to do it. That is, in my opinion, an appropriate use of a reserve fund. It was unanticipated. It could not have rightfully been expected when we were doing the budget. That's why we have reserves. That's a policy question. Another question. How do you want to address rising costs? So should the town prioritize increasing revenues? Or should we, as we're going to build the budget, or should we plan on cutting services? How do you want the staff to address bringing back to you a balanced budget? I'm going to define balanced budget, by the way. I didn't say that when I was in definitions. We're going to define balanced budget. I'll work on my verbs and my terminology, but the bottom line is, it is my expectation that I'm going to bring a budget to this council where revenues cover expenditures. Okay, I think the state's legal definition of balance is something more akin to revenues plus your fund balance cover expenditures, right? It gives you that wiggle room. That's why it's a policy question. I think what I want to do, and I would like to get direction in December, is I want to bring a budget where revenues cover expenditures, period. Okay. But they need to give me that rudder steer. They need to tell me, because then as we go into the budget conversations with department heads, it's like, well, we know we're not getting more revenues, so we're gonna have to look at cutting. Okay, so what's discretionary versus mandatory? Another question for them. Do they want true cost recovery in the enterprise funds? Meaning, are user fees going to cover, or are we gonna subsidize from the general fund? Okay, that is a policy question I need, and the sooner I can get an answer on that, the better, because when we go to crunch all the numbers, we need to know that. What are some other things here? I won't go through all of them. Debt financing, this has come up. I know the council has some questions about this, but what is their tolerance for debt financing, and what is their preference? Do they want us to pay as we go? Do they want us to get grants for everything? Or is getting a bond to cover infrastructure maintenance, is that acceptable? Right? That's a policy question I would like to get answered before we start building. What about our maintenance on facilities? Do they want proactive replacement, or do they want reactive repair? Okay. And then down the road, when we don't have enough money to pay for everything that they're going to want to do, because that's going to happen, how willing are they going to be to defer maintenance? Because that's where we always go to get money, right? That's one of the first things we do is we mortgage the future. Okay. I don't want to do that. So I want to have this policy conversation in December before we ever get to the very emotional conversations where the stark reality of not having enough money is staring them in the face on a spreadsheet.
How realistic do you think that will be?
I think the conversation in December will go well. I think I'll get guidance, but then I think I will plan on that, but no plan survives contact with the enemy. And so what's going to happen is the reality of the budgets and the spreadsheets, when we bring them that first budget, it's probably going to be a little bit of shock and awe, because they're going to see, wow, we didn't get to do a lot of the things that we thought were going to be in this budget. And as we peel it back for them and walk them through it and say, well, okay, these are the trade-offs. So this is what we heard. These were your priorities. This is what we heard. So this is the budget we built. Now, if you want us to tweak it, we will absolutely do that. But tell us where you want to tweak. And it's all going to go back to these fundamental policy questions, because something's going to shift, like the maintenance. They may give me a policy that says, yes, we want proactive replacement. So let's get a 5-year, 10-year capital improvement plan. And I'll say, yes, absolutely. We will do that. Okay. But when it comes down to it, and somewhere in here this is where I'm really going to rely on this committee, and I'll get to this section of pages in a moment. These are policy questions that I brought mid-budget development for La Plata County, because it's exactly what I'm describing. We didn't have enough money. And so I had to come back to my board and say, and I think I had 10 different questions for them, where I said, okay, where do you want me to find the money to accomplish all of the things that you want? And these were really hard questions. These are softball questions. These were the tough ones with numbers. And I'll get to these in a second. Compensation and staffing. Do you want to match the market? Do you want to lead the market, or do you want to lag? Right? Tell me now before we build the budget, right? That's absolutely going to change when I bring you the budget. Because they may say, yes, we want to lead the market. We want to lead the region. We want to take care of our employees. Okay. We'll go build a budget that reflects that. And then when we need to find money, where do you find money in a budget? Personnel, right? So we might find that we started by leading, we might find ourselves matching, and by the end of a budget, we may be lagging. You never know. Enterprise funds, I already talked about that. And then long-term financial planning. I know there's a desire, I've heard from this council a number of times already. Our budget already looks out 2 years, but I get the sense that they want us to look a little longer. So I'm just gonna ask them point blank, do you want us to start including projections 3 to 5 years out? I would not recommend anything more than 5 years out because I think it's a waste of everybody's time and effort to project that far in advance. But a 3-year look ahead, I think we could do that. We're already doing 2. We could probably add 1 more year. I think that's something that this council is gonna want. So that's what I want to do in December. Karina also in December is going to release the worksheets. I'm sorry, we may not be doing worksheets, right? We may be doing it a different way.
Yeah.
But either way, we're gonna let the department heads know that it is time for them to start building their budgets and submitting them to Karina. And we expect to have those back by January. In February, we expect to have the LEOP study back. We expect to get the state revenue projections back
Mid-February.
in February, and I think there's one more thing in February that I'm forgetting. But it's also happening. In March, we're planning a full-day budget retreat. On March 17th, I've already put a hold on the council's calendars, and that's where now we're gonna roll up the sleeves, and they won't be the narrative policy conversations. This is when we will have already presented a proposed budget in a public meeting, and then on the 17th, we will spend from 8, right now I've got it scheduled from 8 till 5:30 in this room, going department by department and walking through the budget. And that's where we're really gonna get to the emotional piece of budgeting, where there's gonna be, I mean, it's a government budget. There's going to be haves and have-nots. There's going to be trade-offs. There's gonna be value compromises, because that's what a budget is. Okay. That March refinement through the end of March into April. And then I think there's a lot of statutory things we have to get done in
We have
April.
to post certain things
Yeah.
for public hearings, because we'll have to get the public comments. And then after that, I think it's March 12th, we anticipate to have it.
May 12th.
May
May 12th. And that is the date. And I've already got it twice in my presentation, and I'm circling it in red. And we really need to hold the line. The budget this year, because of a number of factors, there wasn't, somebody in my position, the budget got adopted really, really late, and the new council actually had to adopt it. And that's just not a good practice.
So
And
May 12th is the deadline for adopting it.
that's my goal. And I'm gonna strive, and I'm gonna encourage this council to help me achieve that, because we're not doing this in a vacuum. The county is dependent on us.
The county has to know what our tax rate is by May 20th. So.
Correct.
So May 12th would be the town council approval.
That's my
Right.
goal. That is the goal. That is the date that we're striving for this year. Try and have everything wrapped up, have that, at that council meeting, set the fee schedule, set the tax rate, and adopt the budget spend plan. That is the goal. When you figure that on March 17th is when we're really gonna dig into it, and by May 12th, we want to adopt, that's a heavy lift,
Mhm.
right? Because there's not a lot of meetings
Hmm.
between now and then.
And that means that we have to be before that.
Mhm.
Yes, that was the other thing.
Yes.
That was the other thing in February. Thank you. It was, we submit what we have in there, before it goes public to the finance committee. Yes, absolutely.
In February.
Yeah. So it'll either be in February, first week of March. That was the thing I was forgetting. There it is. Okay. So where's your agenda? What am I supposed to talk about? That's process and calendar. I alluded to this a moment ago. So here's
Before you-
another.
I'm sorry,
go ahead.
Before
Yeah,
you
go
move
ahead,
on.
Yeah.
The role of this committee in this, last time we spent a lot of time in this room with you. Are we doing that again, or are we being presented with something that the town will be providing to us in the February, March timeframe as being done? Because we did a lot of legwork in this last year.
Yes, that's what, he's gonna explain what your role will be in.
So
Yeah.
it's changing.
Yeah, I don't want you
Okay.
to do the legwork. You're a volunteer
Okay.
committee. And I value what you do and I value what you bring to the table, but I shouldn't be using you as an extension of the staff, right? So what I want to give you in last week of February, first week of March, is a largely finished product, okay? That, well, maybe 75% finished, who knows, okay? That you can review. So here's really what I would like to ask of the finance committee, that can help me. First of all, revenue projections and your methodology. If you could help Karina, I know that the state provides the tax revenue, right?
They provide the real property tax and they give a report of what the estimated assessment will be with the new construction, and that would be if it's already been permitted. If it's something that's still in the works, they're not gonna know that, and I normally add those in. The other thing, I can get a report from them regarding the types of income tax from the previous year, but they don't project that for us. We have to project that.
Okay. So anything that requires a projection or forecast, I think especially with new counselors and a new council, they really, need to understand how staff arrived at that projection. Okay, what was our methodology for how we got there? And how confident, what's our level of confidence in that projection, right? They need to feel confident that we have run the traps and exercised the due diligence to try and hit the target as close as we can on any projections that we have, any kind of forecasting, any kind of projections. And that's where this committee is really valuable to me. I think I told you the ones I met last time when I was here, I referred to as the long-term finance committee because that's what I had. This is exactly where I need you to weigh in, because you have a level of credibility with the council that is unmatched, that I need to take full advantage of. I need to be able to say that when we present the forecasted amounts and the projections, I need to say that the finance committee has chewed on this. They've reviewed Karina's numbers, they've run their own calculations, and they agree. Even if it's not unanimous, if it's a consensus, I will tell them that, but if it's unanimous, that's great. But if we can come to an agreement on the projections, any kind of forecasting number, that's really powerful for me to say to the 5 elected members. Okay, because that oftentimes is where an elected body will immediately get high center, because you can solve your problems if you over forecast, right? If we're running a deficit somewhere, you can say, well, you were saying that we're only going to see a 1.5% increase or whatever. What if we made it 2? Okay, well, we don't just make it. Like, here's how we arrive at 1.5, and here's why we're really confident in that number, and we would be very uncomfortable changing that. But I've literally had elected bodies ask me, well, let's just change the forecast. Okay, I don't want to do that.
There's consequences.
There is consequences, right? The problem or the challenge too is that forecasting it's an art and a science, and we know it's never going to be spot on. We know that. So we just got to try and dial it in as best we can. And that's where I really will rely on you. So when we get the first set of revenue projections, and when Karina starts doing her forecasting, I would like to feed it to the finance committee to say, can you chew on this for a while and come back and let us know if you agree, disagree, or
Some of this comes from planning with plats that are going to be approved. I know we had the water situation. There's those numbers of how I'm increasing real property tax, or why I increase a percentage, why I increase what we expect for trash, water, and sewer, come from planning based on what their development plans are. So you'll see those numbers as well.
fiscal sustainability. It's a goal of this council. It's probably a goal of every government, right? So that's something that I would love for this committee to be able to make a comment on, even if it was in the form of a letter, or if your chair wants to come to one of the budget meetings with me and say, we reviewed the proposed budget and the finance committee agrees with staff that it's fiscally sustainable. And what I mean by fiscally sustainable is revenues are covering expenditures, of our known expenses in perpetuity, right? To me, that's fiscally sustainable. If I can have the finance committee weigh in on that and make a comment to that, that's very, very powerful. Analyze the policy levers, and I'll get to these in just a second. Another ask I have of you, and I shared this with Karina just a little while ago. Are any of you familiar with the Brown 10-point test for small government? Okay. Did you get a chance to review it?
Did read it. Yeah.
This was, I don't know when it was developed, but it's basically a test where you look at the fundamental financial ratios for any organization and you crunch them for the municipality, and then it compares them based off of is it a GFOA?
Well, it uses the GFOA, the municipalities that submitted their financials for the
That's
award,
what it
so it's pulling that information from there.
And
So
so
it's a best management tool.
right, and so
Okay.
it will compare the town of La Plata based on our audited financials using known, generally accepted financial ratios. And you answer these 10 questions, and then I think we can confidently come to this council and say, yes, we are fiscally healthy or we're financially stable, whatever the words are that we want to use, because that is something that you always get from your elected body is the town healthy? Are we financially strong? You hear all these different variations. So this test is actually quite old. I think it's about 20 years old. I don't remember.
Yeah,
on
the
it.
last one was 2006.
So it's coming up on 20 years old.
Yeah.
But it's a venerable test. It's been around. It's quick and easy to do, but that's something that, I don't necessarily have the time to do it. And if someone could take our audits and pull the numbers and run the ratios and do up a narrative that says we've crunched your numbers and we think the town is in a good position or not a good position, whatever it is. I mean, the numbers are numbers. And if we're not in a good place, we need to know that, sooner rather than later. So that's something that I think this committee could help me with. And then the last thing were the policy questions. So we're going to get into the meeting on the 17th. And we're going to have to make value decisions about what do we want to do. And we know there's not going to be enough money. So I ran into this dilemma last year when I was doing my last budget at the county. And because of some statewide adjustments they had done with the assessment ratio, the county had about a $6 million deficit, which is pretty tough to overcome. And so I did some pretty exhaustive research looking at the 2008 recession, and I found a great academic study that University of North Carolina School of Public Affairs did. And they went, and this was after the recession, they went and they looked at local governments across the nation and captured all of the different tools that local governments use when they don't have enough money. How do you solve your budget problems, right? And so it really was this a la carte menu of all these policy levers that you can pull if you need to balance your budget. And so that's where I went, and that's what I used to produce this document. And then this document I brought forward to my board and said, okay, here's some policy questions. Like number 2 was no market wage adjustment for the workforce. So no raises for your employees. 500 employees in the county, we don't give them any raises. And then we had to estimate the numbers. And so for each of these policy questions, it had the cost savings, it had the lever, and then it had a pro and con statement for it, right? So if we get to a point where we're really trying to find money, and I might have to pull some of these pools out, I would probably come back to the finance committee and say, can you help me crunch these numbers? Help me come up with the pros and cons for this lever. And then, some of these are pretty draconian, like, do you want to do a hiring freeze? Right? That's tough. We did not do it last year. I know they're doing it this year because things didn't get better. But boy, it sure saves you a lot of money. Here was, we were going to save 1.5 million in the general fund, 200,000 in our road and bridge fund, 300,000 in our health department. It's a big lever, right? Horrible for morale. I mean, it's the worst possible thing, right? No, worst possible thing is the RIFs. That's also on here. Reduction in workforce.
Would
These
you
are
share
huge
that
numbers.
with us?
This one?
Yes,
Sure.
just so that we can see,
Where my head was?
yes,
Yeah.
if you don't mind, because that will give us an idea of what we're looking at.
Yeah. I hope we don't have to get here this year. Okay, but you never know. I mean, you just never know where we're gonna be.
But that's the worst case scenario. If we can get past your policy questions and get everybody on board, that's not gonna happen.
Exactly.
Well, the
That's what
key
the-
is also, it's a tool in your toolbox that maybe you don't have to use often, but
Right.
it's there. So it's not like all of a sudden I need this tool and I don't even know where to get it.
That's exactly right. And we didn't use a number of these tools. We used a few of them, like, you know, we budgeted for vacancy savings, which is a big shift for the county. We had never done that before, and I don't believe we do that here at the town either. But that was a big savings lever. Operational cuts, you know, I had two options for them. We could just do a flat, 10% across the board, or, and this was the staff recommendation, or we could do targeted based on your priorities, right? You gave me priorities. So why do the flat 10% and everybody suffers equally, right? Because that's a lot easier. That's a sweeter pill to swallow, right? Rather than the targeted saying, well, these were our priorities, so we are going to choose the have and have nots throughout the organization. They did not choose the latter, they chose the former, and we did, I think a 10% operational cut across the board, right? So, but yeah, happy to share that with you. I'll send it to Karina and can send it out to the team. So those were the things. Let me recap them real quick, because I know I was kind of rambly. So, projections and forecastings and your methodology, that's huge. Because, and as soon as we can get the finance committee working on that, whether it's January or February, whenever we can start working on that, because that really sets the stage. Because if revenues aren't covering expenditures and we know the revenues are locked and we're not gonna quibble over, well, can we tweak the revenues any or anything like that? Then we've cut the argument in half. Now we're only looking at expenditures and we know we've got to deal with that side of the equation. When we give you a draft budget, assess it for fiscal sustainability and just take a hard look at it and see if we're not, make sure we're not missing something somewhere. Like we signed up for something and it's gonna have a, logistical tail that we missed. That would be horrible. Be prepared down the road. This would be in March to analyze any additional policy levers if we have to go down that road. And then perform, we can get you the information on the 10-point test and, crunch the numbers for us on the 10-point test. And that could come at any point, I think, between now and April. Just using the audits that we already have, maybe 1 or 2 years back, just run the numbers and see what the trends are, if any. Those would be my asks of the finance committee for this budget cycle.
I've got a few questions for
Fire
both of you. I'll start with Karina, although I think, Chuck, you already answered it. We will be able to get a look at this Brown small government test.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm gonna send it to you.
Okay, that'll be good. And you started the budget worksheet process with the departments last year, did you not?
Mhm.
And so do you have any lessons learned out of that might cause you to change the process?
The only reason I'm changing the process is because I started evaluating our finance system, our budget module in there. And they now have like areas where they can put notes in, they could put specific descriptions and quantity and amounts, and it would put that into the budget item. We didn't have the ability to do those type of things. That's why we did worksheets. And because now we can do it and I can pull all that information and I don't have to check and make sure I'm pulling the right information, all of it's coming from the system right into budget reports. I want to shift from doing the Excel sheets to doing it in our finance system. We can also, the departments could also attach worksheets and stuff to support the amounts that they put in each line item as well. So they have the documentation there and then the description or an actual item and amount and quantity in there that puts into that line item.
So as Chuck was saying, you're seeking, I'll say, priority inputs from the council. This is also a way to get priority inputs from the departments.
So
I think that'd be important.
right, so I
Another
shared
piece,
the
right.
council's priorities with the departments, and when they build their budget, they should be referring back to that, right? So if they're asking for something, especially if it's something new, a new or an increased expense, they should be tying it back to the council's established goals and priorities. If it's not, then that's gonna be a really tough ask to get past me to even get into the draft budget.
That makes sense, but I think it's important for your team to hear what the departments think their priorities are. And if there's any differences that are in conflict with the council, then you can play the referee.
Yeah.
But it sounds like prior to that, we weren't even asking that kind of question.
No, prior to that, it was just roll over the numbers and put a percentage, and that's what was submitted.
Right.
No, last year we actually asked them to give detail.
Okay, Chuck, you said that you would go to the council in December to seek some of this input. Would that input be expected in that meeting or a subsequent meeting?
No, in that meeting.
Good.
Right.
Because
And so I won't,
time is of the essence. We'll
Right.
run out of time fast, so we're
Right.
not careful.
Well, on the policy questions, so we're already working on it, and they'll get a read ahead in advance of the meeting. So they'll have the narrative, and then I'll have a PowerPoint presentation. I'll walk them through it. And then it'll culminate with the policy questions, and I've already got them drafted. So we should be able to walk through them and have a conversation. It'll be a long meeting, but that has to happen first. That has to happen in December. I need to walk out of that meeting with an understanding of, all those questions we talked about.
Well, that's good to hear. I'd hate to think that you would have to come back to a subsequent meeting to get that input. So, okay.
Yeah, that would put us into mid-January.
So, and I think you've already started answering this question when you were talking about the reserve, not using it for operations. I agree with that, but it does raise the question, are there rules in place for when you would dip into the reserve? And I guess you raised an example, a failed server. You know, when you have some unexpected thing that wasn't seen by the budget, that's a legitimate reason to dive into it. But then, of course, we need to make sure we've got a robust process for re-injecting funds back into the reserve. Okay.
Correct. So
So I
Did-
think,
Go ahead,
so
sir.
I think you're going to get a lot of unanticipated expenditures only because this process is new. But once you start developing this process, the 3 years budget out, your unanticipated expenditures should be declining because your planning is becoming more refined, I would say. I can't remember if he said whether you're fully budgeting your salaries and salaries. Are you?
Yes, we budget our salaries based on with the positions filled, it's that and whatever COLA, and if it's vacant, we budget for that vacancy to be filled.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So unanticipated, back to that policy, whether you want to dip into the reserves, I would say maybe there should be some comment in there as the sources of reallocation funds, lab salary savings, for example, to hopefully offset your unanticipated expenditures before you start dipping into the reserves.
So with something like, say, the server, we may not have to go dip into the reserves at year end, but we want to make sure council's aware of this was unplanned and we might have to do a budget amendment for this or budget reallocation from other departments to cover it. But that's hard to say at this point, but I know that there was nothing budgeted in capital expenditures for IT, so there was nothing there. But we don't, when we do budget amendments, we're not going to dip into the fund balance reserve if there's other areas that would cover it.
Okay, good.
Is there a dollar amount that would trigger you going into the reserves? Is it a capital item purchase or is there something?
Not necessarily, it's all because we're balancing about general fund. So if the revenues in the general fund matches the expenses, then we don't have to go in the reserve. And if the revenues are over, but yet an expense line in a department's over, then we're just going to move the expense from one department. Reassign it to another department, but we're not going to go and then have a budget amendment that pulls it from the reserve.
So a
Of
process
reappropriation.
question there, when you are in a situation where you need to move money from one fund to another, does that,
We don't move money from one fund to another. It would be a department. We can't move from one fund to another.
Okay.
The funds are separate.
so
The
if you
revenue
move
is
it from one
within
department to another, does that require council approval or
Yes.
just, okay?
And that's
got it.
what we do at the end of the year because we don't know where each one's going to end up until it's been completed.
So I'm thinking your logic makes sense that, we never knew this server was going to fail. We owe it to the council to let them know. We might have to dip in.
Mhm.
We might not have to, but
But I want
we,
to put it.
we
out
shouldn't surprise them
Yeah,
ahead of time, right?
Exactly.
What kind of number are we talking about for reserve? I'm trying to get my head around this.
35,000.
How much?
35,000.
Oh, 35,000, okay. That's why I was wondering about the dollar amount that
Mhm.
would jump you into using the reserves,
Yeah.
but you're saying it's
Yeah.
overall budget first,
Mhm.
but it would be earmarked that if we go over the budget, it will come from the reserve.
To cover
and-
that specific purpose.
And would it be a specific reserve that it would come out of?
It would be the unassigned.
The unassigned.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Question. We've heard what Chuck needs. We started out working for her. What does Karina need and
Well-
want and whatever? It might be different from what we did.
Well, this is a new, different process for me. So I'm learning just like you guys are of some of these new strategies that Chuck's bringing up. So I'm not sure at this point. I think when we came in, this was completely new. I had no guidance. We really didn't have a town manager.
Right, you didn't have
So
anybody back you up.
I was just trying to figure out where, and I was trying to get departments to be more accountable for what they put into their budget. And that was my main focus when I went into last year's budget.
I like the fact that we are going to be focused on projections and forecasting. As opposed to a lot of the different things that we seem to have our hands in recently. I think that having a mission statement, and maybe we need to change our mission statement, this committee.
Did,
I don't think,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I don't think we need to change our mission statement. I think it's, I guess supplemental tasks of the projections.
Things changed. I mean, last year we were trying to get departments to evaluate what their need instead of just using last year's budget. Now we're taking another step in it to ensure that we're, putting our budget based on what the priorities of the council are and make sure that departments continue to evaluate their needs and evaluate what they actually need and just not use historical numbers to assume that's what they need to account for it.
Is
Well, I am looking forward to the Brown study, the 10-point test study. I am assuming that that is something that we would be evaluating internally. We can't compare ourselves to other counties because the information is just not out there. And that's what we ran across the problem with the comparative study that we're going to talk about later is the only information we really had that is similar in how they collected the information was 2023 data. So that's something that we need to, your 10-point Brown study is something that we have to maybe utilize internally.
Yeah, well, they're pulling it from the GFOAs, those who have submitted their financials to the GFOA. So that's on the GFO website. You can get those other companies' financials, just like you can get their budgets, those who submitted their budget for award. I mean, when I did the long-term plan, I looked at those budgets that got that special recognition for long-term plans and see what they did and how they put it together, pulled some of their strategies. That's when I put mine together. So you can get that information from the GFOA. There's a whole list and you can go into that list and click on it and it'll bring up that budget, bring you to the page.
I think there's only one Maryland
But the
town on there.
vocabulary for GFOA may be different compared to the study that Mr. Lifkin provided. The
Yeah.
methodology,
Mhm.
how they
Yes.
come up with those calculations. I think that was a great report that we can compare
Mhm.
us to other counties, but we can get into that.
Yeah, but you,
Later.
yeah, and it's basically pulling that information. So if he has those financials, you can just pull that information off those financials. It'll tell you when I send it to you, you'll see what I'm talking about.
Okay, okay.
So the 10 point, I just looked it up real quick. It's 2009
I
document.
think that was a look.
That was the
right?
original, and then the revisiting. I'm sorry, the
Well-
revisiting was 2009. The original
Right.
was a little older than
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, but I believe they were using 2006
Mhm.
numbers because even if it was done in 2009, you'll have to go with the data that's available. So I think it was 2006 that they were looking.
So I do like the list of priorities from the departments. And they can have feedback in the budget development process. It can, this is the way we did it in the board. We had all these priorities that we listed, and the board would go about saying, okay, we can't afford this, we have to delay this. Anything that we cannot afford, then it'll go into the fund balance at year end if we have any money left over. And that was what we were doing for projections. So we would figure out, okay, yes, it seems like we do have some money left over. So let's look at what all this list of priorities, what is the number one priority to fund in the general fund? So that was pretty much how we developed the budget and the board. So we did not play around with revenues. Revenues were stated because it was always defined, both from the state and also from the local county commissioners.
So you looked at what was your fund balance increase from the previous year to determine what else you can fund in the following year?
No, everything was done in the current year. And
Okay.
so we would have projections on a monthly basis, looking at, okay, we feel comfortable in May timeframe, right? Pretty much April timeframe. Yes, we're going to have a good fund balance. Okay, let's take a look at these priorities.
Okay, so you would amend the budget to put those
Uh,
priorities in?
No, because the budget was already set.
Uh-huh. So I'm just trying
So
to,
it's savings, so we had the budget's already set at revenues and expenses. We don't change that.
Mhm.
What does change is the expenditures going throughout the year.
Mhm.
So I'm going to use the example. We have $100,000 budget. But throughout the year, we projecting that we're going to save 25,000. 25,000, what can we use that at year end for the priorities that were listed in the departments?
okay.
And those priorities would have to be prioritized by the town manager, you know, okay, this is what we need to go,
All right,
because
what you're saying.
the town manager is saying, already communicating with the board as to what direction they want to go. So that's how we managed our budget.
So I
That was
got
simple.
two other thoughts that come up that could potentially cost money. But I like, and I'm springing them off your comment before about, do we want to be proactive or reactive?
Mhm.
And hopefully we want to be proactive. And so I'm coming from two sides. One is a citizen dealing with, we got a lot of crumbling infrastructure, stormwater. And I'm not conscious yet if that's really in the mind of the operations department to get on that, or public works, I guess that would be. So public works.
It is, it's top of mind. Yeah.
Okay, that's good to hear.
Yep.
And then secondly, and this comes because of my previous experience on the planning commission, the comprehensive plans always put a lot of projects on our plate. And it's not evident that progress is being made on those projects, particularly since a lot of them were funded by grants. So I gotta figure out a way to turn
What kind
this
of
thing.
project?
Well, from a grant standpoint, we had this thing over at Wells Park, the
Okay.
the theater as an example.
Okay,
Right.
so yes, there are a number of projects that are in various stages of completion across the town. I'm starting on October 21st, the next meeting that we have with the council, to start getting this council up to speed on some of these projects because this council has not been made aware of where we are on these things. And so, for example, on Tuesday, the 21st, we're going to talk about the Southwest Access Management Plan. That's the Catalpa Drive and Glen Albin
Mhm.
intersection. And there was an analysis done in 23. There's a recommendation on how to move forward. And so I've already heard from this council, like there's a lot of concern about the steeplechase. Catalpa's the single entrance point in and out of that neighborhood. And there's a lot of concern about what are we doing about it? Well, we've got a study that was done 2 years ago. I need to bring that in front of you and get you up to speed on that. So that's going on October 21st. The Safe Streets for All grant, maybe that's one of the grants that you're talking about, is also going to be presented on the 21st. We're going to talk about that. I've got the Historic Preservation Commission coming in on the 21st, and they're going to talk about the Firehouse Museum, because that's another thing that's just been going on that this council hasn't been briefed on yet, because they just got seated in May. I didn't start till June 16th. And now here we are, right?
Mhm.
And so, and then on the 28th, I've got the La Plata Parkway bike path, the 2
Yep.
mile stretch of bike path that's gonna eventually run from Rosewick all the way down here to Maryland 6. I've also got the state coming on the 28th to talk about the Maryland 6 reconstruction, safety enhancements that's gonna occur in 2027.
When will
Have
they,
you seen that?
I have, sir, the presentation from the state.
Yeah,
The one with all the roundabouts?
Yes,
yeah.
talk about the dog bone or something?
Yeah, the
Yeah,
dog.
okay.
correct.
So they're coming to the council?
What's that?
When? They're coming to the council when?
October 28th.
To the 21st.
Okay.
No, that, the 21st were those first two
Okay.
topics.
Right.
The 28th, I shifted to Maryland 6 and La Plata Bikeway. And there's one other on the 28th that I can't think of right now. So I've got this, so just like stormwater, I've got this huge backlog of projects. And it is top of mind, right? I actually met this week on that topic, and we've got a list of on-call vendors that we are calling now to try and get in to try and attack our backlog. We've got a prioritized list of the projects, and we have some money in the budget, so we're trying to chip away at that. The fire hydrants, we got them all painted. We had about 2 dozen that were out of service. I think we've got about 15 or so of them repaired. We've still got some to do. We're chipping away at that. We've got the AMI meters, the broadcasters on the water meters. We've got about 350 of them that aren't broadcasting,
Ooh,
which means we have to estimate utility bills. So we're chipping away at that. So I've got a bunch of operational things that we're working on, and then I've got these projects that are just out there. That are in, like I said, various stages of completion or incompletion. That was the other thing on the 28th. I think the Wills Park Amphitheater
okay.
was also going to be presented on the 28th. Now that one, that's really in a nascent phase. Like that,
Right.
that is just conceptual. This council may actually, because that really hasn't done anything, they may say, we don't want to do that, or yes, we think this is a great idea, let's proceed. Some of these other projects, like the bike pathway, that train has left the station. We've spent a lot of money, there's been a lot of studies, a lot of engineering, like that project needs to get across the finish line. So it depends on the project, but I've got to get all of them up in front of this council and get them up to speed. And I'm trying my best to get that done before the end of this year, because we're gonna get to January, they're gonna have 3.5 years left on their tour.
How
And
about Dorchester?
Yeah.
Dorchester's on my list, and I'm probably looking at my November 17th meeting for that one.
So, some of those projects, the Wills Park, I think was kind of founded because we had grant money. If the council says, I like your word nation, I don't pronounce it right, but, if they say, table that as the worst case, what happens to the grant money?
It was the ARPA funds, which are now in a project reserve, so they could allocate those funds somewhere else.
Oh,
So it's
Okay.
not like the grants that we got from the state is for the Dorchester Community Center and the police station. And then the different trails and the bikeway, we've got grants for those.
So some grants have very specific purposes and we have to spend the money on that.
That's where I was coming from, right?
So those are the ones that I'm teeing up first. So October, all those that I just mentioned, those have some grant money that have very discrete purposes.
Mhm.
The Wills Park Amphitheater, the conception of this visionary project that may or may not happen. Those were ARPA dollars. We took the town took the standard deduction. So that money is sitting now in reserves and can really be used at the discretion of council.
Okay.
And there's no longer a time constraint on those dollars because the town did the right things to
Gotcha.
remove those.
Was Dorchester awarded to the town?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And that's another great example. That's a $1.25 million grant for this building that we own that has to be spent on that building. This council hasn't even brought up to speed on that yet. And I've got to get that. And like I said, I think that's on my November 17th or 18th meeting, whatever.
I'd heard some rumors a while back that it was, that what little council knew about it, some of them weren't too excited about it. And that is strictly purely rumor.
But no, I don't think there's, I remember watching the council discuss it and I think there was great concern about, okay, it's great that we have a grant that's going to address the capital needs and the refurbishment of this building. But what about that operation?
Right, right.
And that recurring cost over time, what are we going to do with this? And I thought those were great questions from the council. It's like, okay, what are we going to do with this and how is it going to be funded? And nobody could answer that question. I don't think I have an answer for that question right now either. I have some ideas, but before we even get to that, we have to talk to the council and say, okay, there's a building right around the corner here. We have $1.25 million that we have to spend. If there's a time limit on it, I don't know if that grant has a time limit. I need to let them know that because that will,
I think 3 years.
yeah, so that will give them the sense of urgency.
3 years from the time we
Um,
received the grant?
Yeah.
And about a year of that's already gone, right?
Well, actually, we received the grants end of last year and partly into this year. We got the last one about a month or two ago.
So in the last meeting, we did talk about the project manager that we recommended. Is that still in the works? Or?
It's
have
in the
we hired-
budget.
It's in the budget.
Yeah. That,
A movement on that was,
Well, so I'm a little unclear about the project manager. So some of these projects like the bike path and Southwest Access Management Plan and
Is the bike path us or is that the state or the county?
all three.
All three.
Everybody's got a finger in the pie, everybody, the state. the
But
state's
are
got-
we gonna be managing it or have anything to do with it, or we just need to contribute to it?
No, we're lead on on getting it done. The town is lead on getting it done.
No
But
kidding.
But there's state and county involvement, absolutely.
Hmm.
Yeah. So some of these projects, like that one, we have a project manager that's running that. That is not a person on staff. And so Jamie Kendrick is going to be doing the presentation on the 21st and on the 28th on those projects. So we have somebody that's working those. He's got a planning background, urban planning and development. So we have that. Some of these other things, let's take Dorchester. Let's say we do finally get a plan and we know what we're gonna do with Dorchester. Now we've got 1.25 million. I would imagine that if we're gonna do some kind of renovation or reconstruction or whatever, when we go out to bid for that project, we would write it so that the project management was a component of
Yeah,
the RFP. So I would incorporate the project management into the project itself. And I did this successfully with my radar. I think I talked about my radar tower in Colorado. We didn't know, nobody in the county knows anything about radar, but we had a grant to go build a radar tower for the Four Corners region. Great. So we put in there that all the project management services were gonna come from the vendor that was awarded the contract. And so I had a point of contact on staff but project management was a component of the RFP. So the total bid came in, we were paying for that. So when I see a standalone line item for project management, it really gets me thinking because I would love to have a project manager on staff. But I think the line item is $90,000 or something like that.
It is. I
Yeah.
think this came up because there were a lot of these projects and nobody was taking charge of them.
Right.
There was nobody heading them, nobody doing anything, and we wanted somebody to come in and start taking charge.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I think a lot of the little things, now that we've got the staff fully staffed, like we've got a public works director, we've got, I'm in my position, we've got some of the key positions filled. We're starting to chip away at a lot of these little things and it's going slow. And I know it's going slow, but at least we're making positive forward movement on them. Whereas I think they were stagnant for a little while. So I really don't know what to do with that line item right now because it's there, but I can't. For $90,000, I don't know that I could buy a project manager for a whole year and then that's probably all I get out of them is a year and would the project even be done? It depends on the project. So
So there's your source for your unanticipated file server.
essentially,
Right.
essentially.
You just move money in. That's fine.
Yeah, I mean, that would be the first thing.
Yes.
Reassign the budget to where it
Yes.
needs and from there. But the one thing I don't want is that council said, well, we didn't know that we were gonna have a budget amendment for this. So.
Okay. All right. Great discussion. Anybody have any other thoughts? No? All right. Thank you for that. That was very insightful, I think. Okay, so the next old business, reserves update.
Well, I have a question. Corinne, I sent you my old policy, right, on reserves. Did we share that with the finance committee?
did.
Okay,
So they did a nice job.
because I would love to have something like that to bring before council. Because that, and sir, I think you referenced this just a few minutes ago. It's one thing to spend reserves, but do you have a plan on how you're going to replenish them, right? I think that's as important as how low you want to go in your policy. So I know that the finance committee has been working and doing some analysis about what does right look like for town of La Plata. If we could get your recommendations, and get them to Karina, we'll turn them around and we'll draft a policy like that to give this back to you for your review, but I'll get it in front of council as soon as I possibly can. If I can get it done before the end of the year, that would be my desire.
Did you guys need anything from me, like list of assets or what's in our financials regarding our, what assets categories we have or any type of information, any reports that might help?
But you kind of whet my appetite when you say the list of assets. I know that was a work in progress. some
Well,
time
we
ago.
have our list of assets, which is what we use for financial reporting. Now that we have a new public works director, that's another thing we're gonna bring up because they have another system that they keep track of things in, but it needs to be organized better. So, but that's gonna take a while. But what I can give you is what we have.
I
Do
would
we
like to
have
see
the audited financial statements already completed?
Not for FY25. We are
Not for
in the
FY25.
testing stages right now. They're testing like the general ledger transactions and AP transactions. They're testing those now. The FY24 is on the website. I think we have like from FY 2010 through FY24.
And when would the 25 be completed?
So we are shooting for November 30th to be done with those.
November 30th,
Mhm.
which will leave us maybe a month before the end of the year.
But I can give you our
The
workbooks
draft.
that we have that we submit to the auditors.
Okay,
I can
great.
give you those.
Yeah, that would be good.
Who's performing the audit?
Mitchell and Titus,
Have they done it before?
yes,
Okay.
they were under contract for 3 years. This is the last year we're gonna be going out for an RFP
Mhm.
probably in January because we had a 3-year contract with them.
Okay, so we do have the GFOA recommendations for the reserves already. You did send us that, I believe.
When we first started talking about it.
Right.
And did you guys sign up for membership with the GFOA?
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Because,
Uh,
which reminds me, they changed their membership. So now it's based on organization, not per individual. So
Okay.
now anybody in the organization can have a
Can
membership.
log in? Well, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Good. That's great, because they've got some really good, basic how to be an elected official during budget season
So
classes.
I will send you the link.
They've
to
got some
sign up.
really good stuff. Okay, good.
Okay, so our to-do list would be to give you our recommendations for the reserves before December. Okay?
Yep.
Okay, Karen?
Mhm.
Okay. All right, so the next item is,
Can I add one thing in there? We have two policies for the reserves, one for the facilities and one for the storm reserve. And I
think you
probably,
sent those two,
yes.
didn't you?
I would also recommend looking over those because I don't think
language?
they're, yes.
I also, they're, if I remember rightly, one of them is a dollar amount versus a percentage of budget
Yeah.
or percentage of, so I think that there's some changes in there that need to be changed.
And even
Okay.
the facility, it's based on our current depreciation. Well, it's not a good number to go. by.
Right, it's not real dollars.
So, um,
That's an
yeah,
Counting,
just
counting line item.
look at those and make recommendations on changing those ordinance.
So are the ordinances language, is that pretty standard what was in there, or is that old fashioned as well?
I would review it. I mean, we probably took it from something else and just pasted it in there. I don't think they're well written. We definitely need to change it to percentages and more of looking at what our replacement intention is, not what we bought it for or our depreciation schedule.
okay. Are there anything else other, before we leave the item?
So the, Kelly gave us the SharePoint,
Mhm.
so maybe we could use that for this, so we're
Yep.
not emailing stuff backwards
Yes.
and forwards, and that way.
Agreed. So we'll put our guidelines or reserves recommendation, we'll put it in SharePoint. And we'll have till the end of November to get it finalized.
And
Is that good?
I'll send you the worksheets, and if you guys need any other type of reports or any other data, just let me know.
Do you have access to the SharePoint? So
It was sent to me. I haven't logged in or anything.
Would it be worthwhile having a treasurer's box in there and that stuff goes into there rather than sending it all to us?
I would have to remember to go in there and get
Oh, okay. Well, one of us I can upload that.
Okay.
Because we're gonna have to go back and find some of this stuff.
Yes. I think that centralized point where we have the information, I think it'd be great that we can have that form of communication. Okay? All right, next item, comparative analysis of town of Plata versus municipalities, other municipalities.
I think that was discussed also in the budget with this 10-point thing,
Right.
so.
Right.
I guess the only other thing that this doesn't cover is what other communities like us, what their priorities are within the communities compared to the town's priorities. How do they match up? But I mean, that would be up to Chuck to determine if that was important enough. Like we spend 40% on police services. How
Right.
much do other
Yeah,
communities spend on it?
Those kind of stats matter, and what I really need to do, and I need to do this, not the finance committee, but I don't know who my go-to peer is yet. In Colorado, it was Garfield. It was Garfield County. They used to joke that I had a crush on Garfield County because
You like the way they work?
anytime that I needed a comparison, it was a Western Slope County. It was about the same size. It was about the same budget. It was like, there were just so many parallels that I would always just go, how does Garfield do it? And I would look, right? And then I could bring it back to my commissioners and say, you know, I looked at Garfield, I looked at Mesa County. I had my short list of 3 other counties, and I don't have that here. But those can be really powerful narratives for this council. If I could come up with the 2 or 3 peer municipalities. that
Yeah, I think
So I
our
think
previous
the-
discussion, we had
We
3
have,
or 4, right?
yeah, and in the Excel sheet, there were comparative counties. I think we had 5
Counties or
we-
municipalities?
municipalities,
Right.
excuse me. And we did base it on population. So, I mean, that's something you can look at. There's ratios there, and I think there's also, we separated out the police just by itself.
Mhm.
So that's something that maybe you can look
Yeah,
at.
that can be really helpful because
Yes.
population's one, budget size is another thing to look at. And then, but yeah, how much, you know, what are the peers spending as a percentage
Right.
on public safety or
Right.
on their public works, whatever? That can be really informative because that's similar to the leading, matching or lagging with compensation for people. You could apply that to, well, their public works department is about the same size and the town is about the same, you know, road miles. Look what they're doing versus what we're doing and see how it plays out.
Were you able to look at that at all? The
No,
Excel
you
sheet
guys sent
that
it
I
to
sent
me?
it to everybody?
Sorry, I probably had so many emails.
She
Yeah.
chose
I
not
got
to do that
back.
while she was in Italy.
In Italy, yes.
So when was that? sent?
It's right now, it's in the share.
Okay.
It's in the
okay,
share
I'll
file.
get in there.
You can
Okay.
get in there if you like. But yeah, the ratios, we can develop those even using that. The only thing there is the comparative only goes up to 2023. So that's something that I mentioned earlier.
Well, it was
Okay?
also a little difficult because some of them have had the police departments and some didn't. Some of them completely, like Easton, their water and wastewater is completely separate from the town. I mean, they do all of their utilities over there, so we're not always looking at apples and apples either.
Correct.
Mhm.
Right,
Yeah, that's why it's a really challenging exercise.
yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's a starting point if you want to take a look at it, okay? All right. Do we have anything else?
Well, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you again. The work of the finance committee is, I can't tell you how valuable it is. And I really will hope that, we can get your chair or vice chair or somebody to come with me to at least one of the budget meetings, especially when we're talking about the revenues and the projections, because I really can't tell you how important it is for the council to hear that we have really done a lot of work in arriving at these forecasts and these projections. You know, we're not just making it up and they don't believe that, but it's just really important. And it's not something that, you know, when you look at our finance team, we don't have the depth. We don't have the depth on the bench to do this kind of analysis. And so, you know, having the ability to have volunteer citizens with your background and expertise and knowledge come in and do this, you can't put a price on it. I can't thank you enough. And so thank you in advance.
Do we need you to reach out to our chair so as we kind of suggest that we know what she's doing, you know, whether she's gonna
She's
be
still
at a-
participating?
Okay.
Well, she sat in on the last meeting, right?
No?
Yeah, she was
No.
online, was
Is
she?
that the last one?
Yeah, I think she was there, but I don't know that there was much.
Oh, she was in the car, that's right.
Is that what it was?
She had-
Yeah,
they're
back
going
and
to a
forth,
doctor's,
that's right.
yeah.
But, you know, it's tough when we don't know whether she's gonna be here or not. So,
So the 9/11 meeting, she was absent at. She was present at the 9/4 and the 8/14, and she was
Oh,
absent on the 7/10.
okay,
Yeah,
Well, I mean, I guess that's why it's valuable. The minutes is valuable, I guess. So hopefully, the minutes can be more detailed and then she can read them and move along, okay? All right. Good meeting. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second,
Second.
those in favor? Aye,
Aye.
opposed. Thank you.
Chuck, can I have a moment with you?
Said this golf project.